Dr. Kalbe Sadiq, fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Two things I am reminded of this evening, one a little more immediate and one from a slightly distant past. Our brush with Islam and my brush with Shia Islam is restricted to what happens at Muharram in the city of Lucknow. Ashura is a word that we have grown up with, but it has been more associated with the lights of the Imam Baras, the wonderful aromatic food which was available for sale outside, and some kind of distressing performances which would take place on the streets with people smashing tube lights, using knives, and generally looking rather barbaric. And that's what we grew up feeling that Shiite Islam was all about. But then a few years ago, I took the trouble with a friend of mine to go for almost every one of the Muharram processions in the old city. There was Momzari procession, there was the Chup Tazia procession. And then we went and visited different sites. We went to Kazman, we went to Karbala, where I was shown a Khuni Ghar, and once again I was a little nervous. And gradually it began to sink in that all the ritualistic systems of mourning, much of it stage managed, took away from the essential sacrifice and the meaning of the man and his retinue that were killed at Karbala on that fateful day. What I did notice, and of course this is cosmetic, was in these alam processions, there were tiny children in rags, holding alams which were expensive, flashy, satin, with a lot of embroidery, and it looked so beautiful. And the contrast was striking. It was as striking as the thought of Jesus Christ being born as a little baby, wrapped in swaddling clothes, which once again is basically rags, and being offered gold, frankincense, and myrrh at the time of his birth. And it's difficult to reconcile these things. It is difficult to reconcile that this happens in so many different faiths around the world. Whether it is Islam, which I this evening have a privilege to share insights with through you, or whether it is Christianity, which I have been brought up by an accident of my birth. The fact remains that there is disparity, there is pain, there is suffering, and shoulder to shoulder, this is something that has to be worked on. I did tell you that there was a second thing I wanted to share with you. And this is what happened a little earlier today. I was not too well this morning, and so spent a little time in the school garden when the break was on. In my school, everybody knows everything about whatever is happening. And so one of these little boys came to me and said, "I believe that you're a speaker today." And I said, "Well, actually, yes." So he said, "I may be there, and I want to hear you speak." And he was rather clear about what he wanted me to say. And there were a few other boys over there, and he told them, "Sir is going to speak about the Shias." So these other children asked, "Who are the Shias?" It's a mixed blessing for children to know as well as for children not to know. And he says, "You don't know?" there was this very bad man called Yazid, and he killed this other man because this man was born to save Islam, and Islam is only saved because of him. Now that's a boy in what is arguably a very prestigious school. But the message which the child was given was a message which obviously he had picked up at home. That there are the good guys and there are the bad guys. There are the heroes and then there are the villains. There is good and there is evil, and they are represented by particular individuals. Come to Christianity, you see the same thing going on. We all need our Herods, we all need our Pontius Pilate, and definitely if we didn't have Judas Iscariot, I don't think the story of salvation would ever be complete. But to bring the concept of two faiths together through a person who has not studied theology and who definitely would not like himself to be labeled as belonging to one particular faith or another. For me, the sacrifice of Christ is more than enough. You don't need more, but sadly, more keep coming every day. There are some that are more popularized than others. The sacrifice of Hussein, the sacrifice of Jesus. And as followers of great men whose sacrifice has been barbaric, we build up a certain ritual and a certain ritualized mourning in whatever we do. And we carry on perpetuating this, which only instills more hate, hurt, pain, anguish, and so on, which I am sure the two men whom I have specifically referred to would not have wanted either in their lifetimes or even in their memory. As far as the two faiths are concerned, Ashura and Good Friday happen every day. What is the difference? There is killing, there is pain, there is humiliation every single day. And every day is an Ashura. Every day is a Good Friday. The Christians perhaps have gone one step ahead to be able to convert great suffering into a message of hope. For there is the concept of the resurrection of Christ after 3 days in the tomb. If tomorrow we commemorate Chehelu, the 40th day of the martyrdom, in the Christian faith, we commemorate and celebrate Pentecost, which is not the 40th day of the crucifixion of Christ, but of the resurrection of Christ. And there is a subtle, well, not a subtle difference, there is a great difference in that. For the Christian sacrifice is the belief that the sacrifice was not in vain, that death preceded a resurrection, and that the resurrection is something which gives us the element of hope, and that the tomb of Jesus Christ remains empty. In the concepts which we have in the Shia faith, there is a sense of morbidity that still continues. We still weep. I don't know if we have forgiven. I need to know more about this. I don't. I don't know if we have forgiven. Would Hussein have forgiven? Where are we headed? Is there any sense of forgiveness possible? Or is it necessary for us to have our villains, as the little boy in the garden this morning told me? And so, ladies and gentlemen, while Jesus hangs between heaven and earth, on a cross which was not just terribly barbaric and painful, but so terribly humiliating. And that was the whole idea. To be able to break the back of somebody who said things differently. For me, belonging to the faith into which I was born, that is more than enough. There is no need for more sacrifices. But we have them happening all the time, and every time they happen, they are lauded. Every time there is an assassination of a great man, like Mahatma Gandhi, you put up a statue of him. And as soon as you put up a statue of somebody, you no longer have to follow them. Because you see, he is a Mahatma, he's not like me. Mother Teresa unfortunately died in her bed, and so did Nelson Mandela. So we will not be seeing them as the great saints, but these indeed are the saints of the world. And shoulder to shoulder, they will always remain saints of the world because they followed what was right and were not given the designation of saints by any small-minded, petty, sectarian kind of commitments. A little while ago, the speaker preceding me spoke of the way in which, when Hisab is done, your good deeds will be counted. It is not whether you belong to a particular faith or another. But the saints of the world are those who have followed these principles of right. And there has been enough of bloodshed. The men whom we worship, the men, I use the word again, worship, the men whom we are ready to die for, whom we are ready to kill in the name of, are themselves men who have been tortured and who have died painfully as human beings. Yes, it's time for it to stop. One last thought. Are we ready for this? I'm not sure. Syncretism will require a God. We are not ready to sacrifice our gods just yet. I love to believe my God is the best, my daddy greatest. But we are moving towards that. And when we wake up and begin to understand that it is indeed humanity which will win over everything else, I am sure we will be able to create some kind of system where the great men, the great leaders, the prophets, the saints, the gods will be able to come together, and we will be able to lead lives which are, well, relatively better off than those in the century in which we exist. Thank you very much.